There we go. I think everybody else was in person.
Oh, good.
Okay, Jeff, I got you. I think he knows he's muted.
I'm sure. Well, if you want to double up on your duties, I think Eric's leaving Winnebago.
You know, I had lunch with Mr. Guth here last week. Yeah, we talked about it, and I've been talking to Carla. She's got us coming over to hopefully interview a few people. So I'm involved no matter what I do, it seems like. So.
Well, good.
So hopefully, well, yeah, it's kind of big shoes. I've always enjoyed Eric, a very smart young man, but I know he said he wanted to do other things. So.
Yep, that's okay.
Yeah. Young kid. Yeah, absolutely. Old guy like me, I'm pretty set in my ways.
I hear you.
Okay, I'm with you. We'll be getting everybody in here in just a minute.
All right, Jeff. The acoustics in that room are tragic.
Well, that should be fun.
We'll get some more chairs here.
Just seeing that.
Excuse me, folks, if you're gonna have conversations, could you move them outside, please, so we can conduct our meeting? We will be recording this. It's a Zoom meeting. So if you're gonna carry on conversations, please do so outside. Okay, Matt, can you still hear us?
Got you loud and clear.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, it is 7 p.m. We do have a quorum. All commission members are present. Here is a copy of last week's minutes and this week's agenda. Is there any discussion on minutes or agenda or motion to approve?
Motion approval of the agenda and minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Are you catching who's doing these motions and seconds, Matt?
I am. That's great. It's the same as last month, or week, so that's good.
Trying to make it easy for you, Matt.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay, all those in favor of approval of the last week's minutes and this week's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. The agenda and minutes are approved. So next item on the agenda is to hear from our Worth County Board of Health representative, Dr. Stephanie Seaman. So Doctor, glad you could make it with us tonight. We'd like to hear your perspectives of what we should be aware of, what we should be concerned with, and things you want to make certain that we're considering with regard to a commercial wind development ordinance. So,
Thank you. Okay, I don't know how many of you know me. A lot of, oh yeah, I see a lot of familiar faces here. I came to Northwood in 1977 and began practicing medicine here at that point in time. When I came to Northwood, in Worth County, there were already 4 doctors. Seems hard to believe, doesn't it? There was Dr. Austin, who actually began practicing here the year I was born. And then there was Dr. Olson and Dr. McAllister and Dr. Allison. And they were all very gracious and very delighted to have somebody to come in to. The wind turbine noise and human health. That's basically what I want to talk about tonight. And this brings back how years ago, there was a great deal of controversy about bringing in CAFOs, confined animal feeding things. And I must say that I think you people are going about this in the right way. You're starting out, first of all, with the zoning board and having them sort through what people are thinking, what people are concerned about, so that when you do write this ordinance, it's going to be according to what your concerns are. I asked to speak at this meeting because, to me, the most important concern is the health of the people of this county. So when I started out looking at this, it's probably a couple years ago. And one person who was a proponent of really controlling what happens with the wind turbines and so on brought me material. It was a stack this high. And that was appropriate because what I did when we did the CAFOs was it took me a year to write that ordinance. Then it went to a group of community members to fine tune it. But I took from all areas of the country who had dealt with this problem. And I think that this board is also looking at, I know they've reviewed some counties in Iowa who have ordinances. They've looked at other places that have done this so that we don't have to start from nothing. We have some background here. So when I did this, I simply started out looking for things on the internet and then went into the medical part of it and so on. So what I'm going to talk about, I'm not going to talk that long, though I can. I'm really good at this. I can talk and talk and talk. What I want to talk about, first of all, is the fact that a lot of the complaints that people have given because of the noise and so on of the turbines have been poo-pooed. The problems that they've had, physical, have been called psychological problems. So as a physician, I want to know, because psychological problems deserve treatment also, but the frustration, the challenge of living with something that you didn't want there, or something that you wanted there, but it's not turning out like you expected it to be. Those are all part of this. So I took most of what I'm going to talk about tonight from a abstract written by two people in the field, because it had so much material in it that they had gone over and tried to say, this is valid or this is not valid. So what I'm going to talk about, the emissions of the infrasound and low frequency noise by industrial wind turbines, the perception of this noise by humans, the evidence for establishing a causative link between these wind turbines and noises, as well as adverse health effects on humans. The physiological basis for those. I'm not going to go into that. That gets us into diagrams and stuff on the blackboard. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk about recommended setback distances and permissible noise levels. Touch briefly on the relationship between annoyance and health. I'm not going to talk about recommended methods for measuring the infrasound because I'm no engineer and I'm not interested in it. It has to be done, but I run a lab. I don't know how they get those figures. I want the figures. So that's sort of my thing about that. I'm also going to briefly touch on the prevalence of these adverse health effects in individuals that are exposed to these wind turbines. I'm not going to talk about the scope and quality of the literature. I'm not going to go into that. I would if I were defending this in court. I would have to do that. But the reviewed evidence that I accumulated overwhelmingly supports the acoustic emissions from these industrial wind turbines is a leading cause of adverse health effects in a substantial segment of our population. So, I'm going to touch on probably the most common one, which is sleep disturbance. It is a sufficient reason to site the turbines at distances that do not disrupt sleep. And sleep disturbances are of several kinds. Sometimes the noise will awaken someone, but there is noise that they can't hear, that our ear cannot focus in on. Those also can disrupt sleep. What happens when you disrupt sleep? We know now that inadequate sleep is one of the big causes of heart disease. Disrupting sleep does affect the heart and its rhythm. That's probably its biggest problem, though there are others. There's ample evidence to link those health effects with prolonged exposure to outdoor sound levels of 40 decibels or higher. But it's prolonged. The thing about it that they kept coming back to is if you take these people away from this, they recover. They don't have the symptoms. So if you take them away from that noise, they will recover. The noise can be heard especially well in areas with low background noise. It's quiet where I live, very quiet, except for my dog.
Yep.
So the noise can be heard especially well when there is low background noise levels, which usually occur at night, and lower nighttime net wind speeds at ground level increase the contrast between the turbine and background sound levels. And using test data taken during daytime wind conditions will result in a large underestimate of nighttime sound from these turbines, and thus underestimate the potential for sleep disruption. So that, these are some of the things that need to be taken into account when we're talking about this. Various symptoms, other than the sleep disturbance, have been described. But that one is probably the most common one. Headache, dizziness, vertigo, unsteadiness, tinnitus, ear pressure or pain, memory and concentration deficits, irritability and anger, and fatigue and loss of motivation. Annoyance, reduced quality of life, headaches, annoyance, just general irritability. Now, I want to talk about the conclusion, because then I'll go backwards. I do things a lot this way. There are psychological reactions to frustration. There are physical reactions to frustration. There is a general causative link between human health and the infrasound and low frequency noise that is emitted by these wind turbines. These people who did all of this, and you've got a lot of things to talk about tonight. I could take an hour, but I won't do that to you. Large wind turbines generate infrasound, which we can't hear. Some people, however, experience
Excuse me,
it.
Doctor, the infrasound, I know there's dBA measurements using the A filters, the higher frequencies. DBC measures the lower frequencies. Do you understand that is it accurate for us to understand that DBC is in fact measuring low enough frequencies to get to that infrasound level?
I don't believe so.
So there would be a third level that needs to be measured besides dBA, DBC? Do you know how that is measured?
I do, but I can't explain it.
Okay, well, we
I mean,
can follow up.
yeah, I will follow up on that.
Does it have a name or a term?
Let's see if I can find anything in this paper.
That's all right, we'll follow up on that to get that.
Okay, yeah, because I wasn't gonna go into the measuring of it, so I just didn't pay any attention to it. But the wind turbine has unique acoustic characteristics when you compare it to other environmental noises. It is low amplitude modulated, intermittent occurrences of tones, and that mirrors the peak energy of the blade pass frequency and the first several harmonics. When they talk about harmonics, that's a level of sound too that occurs with this. the coupling mechanisms in your inner ear prevent our bodies generate sound, but it prevents the internally generated sound, but not externally generated sound from being perceived, which means that perception of wind turbine infrasound is far more disturbing than the infrasound generated within the human body. Now that's a mouthful. And I really didn't want to get into the physiology of it that much because I think that's sort of beyond what you're talking about here. But there is a great deal of peer-reviewed scientific research that audible and inaudible low-frequency noise and infrasound from these wind turbines lead to complaints ranging from annoyance to actual health concerns in a substantial percentage of the population. Though sleep disturbance is the most common problem and the most one-sided, a variety of other health problems have also occurred. And I'm not going to talk about the ear and how it works and how it sorts things out. I think that's beyond what you people want to know here tonight. To prevent these I want to get back to the thing. To prevent these adverse health effects, the recommended distances separating turbines and residences be 0.5 mile to 2.5 miles. And secondly, 1.25 miles has been commonly recommended. Now, in South Dakota, they have a 1 mile distance for theirs. Annoyance is a health issue. Scientific, one of the things that I wanted to know about when I was doing this was something called dirty electricity. And that is blamed for a lot of things. It is an electromagnetic field, very weak, which is around these also. But that is not considered the source of these complaints. The estimates of the people, the number of people who are affected by these wind towers exist only for annoyance, not for the health effects. Multiple reports talk about stress, health, quality of life, and a non-trivial percentage of people who live near these experience these adverse health effects. It seems reasonable that the noise from these does not cause the adverse health effects in the majority of the population, but accurate estimates of it have not been established yet. It is clear that considerable numbers of people are affected. And most of the reading that I do says that 20% of the people in a given area can be affected by these. I found this statement interesting. Based on all the evidence presented, our fundamental view is that the controversy surrounding these adverse health effects should not be polarized into the two groups, consisting of either pro-wind or anti-wind factions. But I want to talk about the third one, which should be, I think, most important, pro-health. Essentially, the pro-wind view is that the wind turbine should be installed wherever feasible, that definitive scientific research is lacking that shows that they cause these health effects. And if you can't hear it, you can't feel it. Well, that's not true. The anti-wind view is that They should not be installed anywhere because wind is not economically a viable source of energy, and all government subsidies and development should be stopped. The view holds that what we can't hear can hurt some of us, and that precautions should be used in siting these wind turbines if health risks are to be avoided. Industrial scale wind turbines should not be located near people's homes, educational and recreational facilities, and workplaces. To me and to people who are concerned about the health effects, the bulk of the available evidence, and I've just barely touched on it here tonight, justifies a pro-health perspective. It's unacceptable to consider people living near these wind turbines as collateral damage while we continue this debate. So further scientific investigations are needed, obviously. And all of this paper here, these are reports from all over the world, Australia, England, everywhere these are being done. But what I came up with was that we can't wait for absolute, this is it. The evidence is there that this does cause a problem. The evidence is there according to the range at which these are built, and how much sound they make, and how much sound they make that you can't hear. There is a vibration that you cannot measure, but occurs. You can't measure it at the turbine, but it occurs, and it's been found in homes located near these turbines. That's another area that needs to be explored. So in summary, this is very brief, and I didn't know how much you wanted me to talk about all of these things because I think you've heard a lot of this before. But when we look at Worth County, we look at the 3 townships that you people are considering right now.
No, we're considering a county-wide commercial wind development ordinance, independent of the zoning ordinance.
Okay, that's good news. That's good news. Because I was going to ask you to consider doing that, because all of this research that people are doing and all of these opinions that you're getting are very important. And when somebody says they can't sleep because of the sound, that is not psychological because they're angry. They really can't sleep. It may be partly because they're angry, of course, but this does affect the ear. And if I had a blackboard, I'd do the whole thing for you and show you where it goes and how the sound doesn't get out of there. But the point is that this is a real health issue. And the only thing that we can do right now is to site these far enough away from these people so that we can at least mitigate some of it. The research continues to go on, and we all need to watch it because obviously this is very important to all of us. But I think it's conclusive at this point in time that these things do cause problems for people, and they are not made up. They actually happen to them. These are people that are suffering from this. So I encourage you to keep going in this way you've chosen to do this. This is excellent. You're getting lots of opinions from people, you're getting lots of information. Now, when you go to write it, you will have what you need. And I just want to point out to you something that I saw this last weekend when I went to the Concordia Cemetery over by Joyce. The first wind turbine that went up is still over there. It looks like a toy. I mean, it's probably as tall as the old windmill on my acreage. It isn't much taller than that. And it sits there all by itself amongst all these giants. So as time goes on, these turbines are going to become better. But it's only when people say, we don't think that you should have this machine here that's doing this to people's hearing, fix it. We're good at engineering in this country. Fix this thing. And they've changed it. I mean, the difference between that little one and the huge one standing there is just unbelievable. But they're dangerous. And I think that they do need to have some protection in place. And also, I'd like to encourage you to leave the gate open to revisit your ordinance in 5 years, maybe 3. This field is moving very fast because you may have more information that will be important to it.
Yeah, I would say that the opportunity to recommend changes to the ordinance, that opportunity exists the day after it's been approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Sure it does.
So, and we can, we can write into a requirement that it be reviewed on an annual basis by the zoning commission, just to make certain that there's nothing that's
I
come up.
think that would be
needs to
reasonable.
changes.
That would be reasonable. The other thing that I'd like to remind you of, and is since I'm not mechanical at all, I'm not going to try to explain how they do measurements, because you wouldn't figure it out from my explanation anyway. But something that President Reagan said once, trust but verify. There needs to be in place
Right.
some kind of check on them, not the company doing
Right.
it. We have an environmental health officer, maybe that's it. I don't know.
Right.
But
So- The approach that we've been considering, and I think there's a general consensus amongst the commission members, and again, we've not voted on this yet. But the approach that we've taken thus far is that we believe sound can be separately measured and managed. Shadow flicker can be separately managed and seen. And so setbacks are really there for safety purposes. And so it's kind of a three-pronged approach that said there's a physical setback component that's there for safety purposes. And the setbacks are, it's as contemplated right now, it's the greater of a specific distance or 3.75 times the height of the total height of the tower, or the tower manufacturer's safety distances, whichever one of those things is greater. And we wrote that so that as turbines change, the ordinance automatically keeps pace. So we set that aside for that. Sound, we believe, because it can be measured, it can also be modeled. And so we're anticipating that there would be a requirement on the part of the wind developer to have to model what the sound would be at the property lines, and that those sound models would be used to ensure that the sound level at the property lines don't exceed the threshold that we establish in the ordinance. And then finally, there's the actual measurement of the sound after it's been put in. The thresholds that we've been considering, and I'd like to get your opinion on these thresholds. Get to the right spot here. So in the daytime, at the property line of a non-participating landowner, would be 45 dBA and 60 dBc during the daytime, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then at nighttime, that drops down to 40 dBA and 60 dBc. None of us on the commission are engineers either. We took those numbers predominantly from Madison County. They had the most robust sound language in a wind ordinance. And Madison County, as an aside, the rest of their ordinance is written very exclusionary. They've got 1.5 mile setbacks to roads, 1.5 mile setbacks to residents, a maximum of 51 turbines in the county, which happens to be the number of the first project that went in before they had the ordinance. And they go into great detail on how those measurements are derived. So we're somewhat taking on faith that the 45 dBA, 60 dBc daytime and 40 dBA, 60 dBc nighttime are appropriate levels to manage to for health reasons. Do you have an opinion on those levels at all, or?
I do, because I really want to get more information, because to me, it's going to depend too on how many wind turbines you have in the area.
Well,
And so, you know,
the way that it would be, the way that it would be if we were to go forward with what we've discussed so far is each turbine, they have to do the modeling for that particular turbine at the property lines to these sound thresholds. When it's actually installed, the measurements would be at the property lines. And so if there's one turbine or two turbines or four turbines, it wouldn't really matter. The sound threshold is the sound threshold. Now, if that sound threshold is breached because of a fourth turbine, well, it's up to them to mitigate that. And we have a whole separate section that we would contemplate that goes through what that issue and complaint process is. And the fact that the measurements are conducted by a third party that's approved by the Board of Supervisors that doesn't have anything to do with the wind energy company. And so the language would require that they have to mitigate that. They have to get it to within the thresholds. If they don't, then they cease operation on the offending turbine. And as a part of the permit process, they have to acknowledge all of these requirements and acknowledge the fact that they are enforceable in court and that they're going to abide by these things. And so we're trying to make certain that we've established appropriate thresholds at the property lines and have a mechanism whereby it's independently measured and can be adjudicated if there's a complaint. So I think we'll have those bases covered. It's really the question of, do we have the appropriate thresholds?
I don't think so.
Okay. What do you think the thresholds should be?
I think they should be lower.
What? Well, let me add one more point. We've also, we're contemplating language that requires that ambient noise, daytime and nighttime ambient noise is measured at these locations. And if the ambient noise is lower than these thresholds, then the ambient noise becomes the threshold.
Wow. Who thought that one up?
It's based on what we found from all of our research, and that's what's in our working papers right now.
Okay, okay. I like that. But I don't think those levels are as low as they should be, especially at night.
Okay?
Yeah, and I will research that because I don't want to give you a number and
Sure.
say, oh, no. that's
Yeah,
not right.
one other question related to that. So those thresholds that I gave you is what we're contemplating for the property line of the non-participating landowner. We also have thresholds at the edge of the human occupiable buildings on the participating landowner. You know,
Okay,
if there are deleterious health effects, those deleterious health effects are not just to the non-participants, they're to the participating landowners as well. And we have noise thresholds outside their homes, essentially, of 50 dBA and 65 dBc. So we've raised the threshold for them. We could certainly lower that for them as well. And then I'll also note, it's important to understand that with regard to the noise thresholds at the property lines or setbacks or shadow flicker at the property lines, those things are subject to a waiver. So if the non-participating landowner says, it's okay, I'll accept this higher noise, or I'll accept the noise at my house, or the shadow flicker or closer distance, they can waive those things. They just have to, they have to agree to it in legal form and record that burden on the property through an easement filed at the recorder's office.
I think you've covered your bases by doing that, because there may be some people who really don't care,
Right,
or that they think it's not going to be an issue, so they're going to,
right.
they're going to.
So can I follow up with you then on your
Absolutely.
thresholds for
Yes,
for the
because
DBA,
if I
DBC?
recall, they're lower than that. They are lower than that, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and it also, if you could find out how the infrasound is measured, if the DVC filter isn't catching that.
Yeah, I'll give you an explanation of it that you can
Okay.
understand.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. One of the things that they talked about in this was that these should not be sited where they're putting them now. They should be in places where there aren't people, so you wouldn't have to worry about it. And they showed some pictures of out west,
Sure,
that's where they should be.
right,
But they don't have the wind that we do,
right. Any of the other
Yes.
questions?
Dr. Seaman, that was a pretty compelling example of some things that I'm concerned about. You made the reference that a lot of places they're going 1.25 miles for commonly recommended distances. So like if we don't have a choice in this county and they're gonna build them, you're saying your professional recommendation is at least 1.25 miles from a property line.
Would that be if you were not managing the sound itself?
I think the question comes in then about the third level of measuring the infrasound.
Yeah,
Right, I think
If we can get a hold of
that,
that and manage it,
right, the
but
key,
without it, you're saying 1.25
yeah,
at least.
at least.
So if we can't get a handle and good data on third level measured infrasound, 1.25 or more miles.
It's quite a distance.
Mhm.
But if you can't mitigate it any other way, that's what you do. So I will get back to you on this, though. It's a very good point. And I've read it, but I don't want to try explaining it
Right.
because I will really screw it up. Because the infrasound is something you cannot hear, it must be measured.
Mhm.
And so it's actually, to my way of thinking, almost more important than what you can hear, but, you know,
And it was my understanding that that's what the DVC filter is picking up, is that sound below the high frequencies that humans are hearing.
it does, but I don't know that it picks up the infrasound.
Okay.
I will
Sure.
clarify that for you.
Yep.
I will clarify that for you.
Other questions on the part of the commission members? All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. And we'll look forward to the follow-ups. And you're welcome to stay and listen if you like. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is, there were a few last minute thought updates on the draft. So this is just an extract that highlights in red some of the things that have been updated there. So I'll give you a minute to look through those real quick.
So you are going to, as a group, this group is going to write the ordinance.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm going to go through here in just a couple of minutes what our process will be.
Okay.
I'm just letting these folks catch up on some work that was done this week.
Did you use any particular county's ordinance as a guideline or anything like
Yeah,
that?
we drew from about 6 or 7
Oh, good.
particular counties.
Good, yeah.
We looked through 38 counties across all regions of
Sure.
Iowa. Of those 38 counties, 34 of them had wind-related ordinance in place, whether it was a standalone ordinance or language inside their zoning ordinance. And then of those 34, there were 6 or 7 that we used as primary sources of information and guidance.
I think that's always helpful, because you kind of
Right.
a framework to language and, oh, did we forget something? You know,
Right,
that
right.
sort of a thing that you can gain from these other
Yep.
people.
Okay, so for the commission members and everybody that's listening in on the recording and here in the room as well, I want to just walk through, and this was a discussion that we had during the commission meeting last week. And I apologize to everybody about the quality of the recording last week. The internet kept dropping. We were in the Olson room. And finally, we ended up, we had to give up on it and just dial in our zoning administrator, because he works remotely. We had to dial him in because he has to listen. He's the secretary for the commission. And so that's why we decided to move to here. So we had a bigger space and ideally better internet. So the process that we discussed last week and that we're hoping to execute on is tonight, as a zoning commission, we'll go through, we'll identify anything that the zoning commission members have concerns or issues with regard to a draft that we've put together and we've been discussing over the past several weeks. Assuming we resolve any of those issues, the hope and intent is we'll get this draft to 95% state that we're comfortable with. The zoning commission will vote and say, this is the draft ordinance that we wish to provide to the public for comment, and that we will provide to all of the folks that spoke at the commission, as well as the North Iowa Council of Governments and county attorney. We'll give copies to all those folks and ask for comment. And then we'll schedule a public hearing if we vote on this tonight, we'll schedule a public hearing for June 16th to be held at the Kensett Community Center. I verified its availability. And we'll ask folks to look at the draft that we've put together, provide comment specifically to what it says here. If there's something there that you like or don't like, or you think that we've missed on something, or something is missing, the opportunity will be to provide that feedback to us not later than that public hearing. Once we have all of the comments from everybody that we send the copies to that spoke with the commission, and we've had the comment from the public on July 16th, then the commission would come back again with those comments, consider those comments and what changes we need to make to the draft. We'll work through that process, make those changes, ultimately get to the point where the commission would vote on a final proposal. That final proposal then would be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors along with our recommendation and a report of how it is that we came up with the draft and what our recommendations are. And then it's up to the Board of Supervisors to do whatever they may or may not do. It's completely up to them. So that is the process. I would expect at the fastest pace, if we vote to make our draft public tonight, we would post that online tomorrow, have the public hearing on the 16th. I would imagine it's going to be another week or two before the commission could get done with whatever next round of changes. So it would be July before we get our proposal to the Board of Supervisors. I would point out that there is a bit of a time urgency on this. I want to caution people to work for perfection. Perfection could kill it. We know that Invenergy Worthwhile Wind Project is finishing up, signing landowners. They're going to be going into their design phase fairly soon, and they'll be applying for permits pretty soon for the 3 zoned townships. If this ordinance is not in place, and they apply for permits for those 3 zoned townships, there is no permitting process for the unzoned townships. So there, again, I just caution to work on this until we get it to perfection. If we can get it to 95%, 95% is a damn sight better than 0. So that's the process that we've laid out, that we've spoke amongst the commission members and we've agreed to. So that being said, you guys have had a chance to look at the updates that I gave you that was made during the week. Any questions or comments specific to those updates? Nope.
It looked like just a little bit of cleanup and
Yeah, it's mostly admin stuff.
just admin,
Yep.
so.
All right, so anything on the draft then that you think we need to address yet tonight before we vote?
This is gonna seem minor in the definitions,
Mhm.
just because it's been staring at me. We've got participating landowner as a definition.
Yeah,
But we
Yes.
don't have non-participating.
yeah, I did that on purpose. I can add non-participating, but I just assumed
use it
that
a couple of
non-participating meant not the
Sure.
participating.
I mean, we
But-
use it a few times.
Yeah,
We're gonna clarify
Well,
participating.
Technically, you're right.
Participating.
yeah.
I would
It
assume so
seems
too.
obvious, doesn't it?
It does, but. Ooh. Sometimes you have to state the obvious.
Yep.
At the end of the last meeting, I offered conversation on decommissioning, about having a third-party consultant to
Yeah,
take care of decommissioning and recording it at the courthouse so that it is put in against the land deed, so it comes up if somebody's buying a farm or whatever. So it shows on your farm, non-disclosure.
Yeah, so is there an update on
I didn't
page
see it.
29?
I didn't
Is
see
there
it.
29?
24 for the handout.
Okay, I missed an update. So there's an add, I'll read it to you guys. There was an added paragraph C on page 29 under the section 7 discontinuance and decommissioning. The paragraph C reads, upon completion of decommissioning activities, the county engineer and permit holder will verify that all planned activities have been completed per the decommissioning plan or notes made with regard to items not completed. Records of completed activities will be retained in the county engineer office for 5 years. Items left in place contrary to the decommissioning plan will be recorded in the form of easements with the county recorder's office. So I think that's covered.
Yeah, this must be that new copy you gave me, so I.
Yeah, it's in that,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't think it was. I was looking at the
Oh,
revisions.
You didn't look at
expecting it
the
to be
copy
there.
that I gave you?
Well, most of it. About 14 times falling asleep.
Yeah, because that wasn't part of this, but it was.
No, I wasn't, I thought it was done earlier.
Yep.
Anything else? Justin, I know you said last week that there were some of this that you hadn't had a chance to look at yet.
Most of that was the legal stuff that, yeah, like Todd put in.
A lot of boilerplate stuff,
One thing on page 11,
but very important.
letter H, we've got a lot of telecommunication stuff in there that it can't affect. One thing is, and electromagnetic may fit into that, but GPS, whether it be, Dave's floaters, our tractors, somebody that's out doing a geocache or something like that, so it doesn't interfere with that. I don't
Okay,
know if that needs to be in there, if that's part of the electromagnetic communication. Because I do know that there are certain turbines that affect that.
yeah, well, so I did add in here, you saw with the
Yep,
handout I
yep.
gave you tonight, weather,
Yep.
weather or navigation radar.
Yep.
I added that in
Yep, I
a
did
couple
see
of
that.
different spots.
Yep.
I can add in GPS as well.
Yeah, it just says the such as radio, telephone,
Yeah,
GPS.
yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, yeah.
Because they might classify that as, oh, that's something different. We don't have to worry about that.
But if you spell it out, then- so you're trying to tell me you don't want to drive? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm trying to tell you at 2 a.m. when it takes a 45-degree the other direction, it wakes you up.
So if we just add GPS in the subsection H
yeah.
on page 11,
Correct.
Yeah, it's signal interference.
Yeah.
so so where it says such as weather or navigation radar, comma, radio, et cetera, I'll just start it with such as GPS, comma, weather or navigation radar,
Yeah.
et cetera. Okay. Anything else?
One other thing, I guess, I'm not sure exactly where it fits in. I'm gonna guess that's a review and approval process. We have in there 300 feet or, so let's go to page 23, letter B. Just guessing it might go in there. If they change it 300 feet, but they also cannot, the setbacks or standards are still in place.
Where are you?
Page 23, letter B.
Final decision, let it be.
Yeah, modification after approval, I'm sorry. So number 4.
Okay.
That'd be,
Oh, 4B.
4B, yeah.
Yep.
Proposed relocation, if it's 300 feet or less, they don't have to I'm reading it as they don't have to let anybody, notify anybody.
No, no, that's, so let me reread this. Maybe my grammar is messed up
And
here.
maybe I just read it.
So it reads, the location of turbines and project substations can only be modified from the final development plan with approval of the zoning administrator if the proposed location is 300 feet or less and does not reduce any setbacks or standards beyond the limits stated in section 1. Or for modifications exceeding 300 feet with the approval of the Board of Supervisors. So what that says is, once it's been approved, the final development plan has been approved, you've been permitted for these locations. If you need to shift something around a little bit and it's within 300 feet of where it was supposed to be, then the zoning administrator can approve that, provided it's not going to reduce any setbacks.
Okay.
If the move is more than 300 feet, then it requires Board of Supervisors approval.
Okay. And the reason I brought that up, because in the past project, and the one out here,
Right.
stuff got moved, and it might have only been 60 or 90 feet, but
Right.
stuff got moved without anybody's approval.
Yep.
Just want to make sure that that's covered.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so less than 300, the zoning administrator can
Gotcha.
approve it once he's
Okay.
verified that it didn't impact any setbacks. If it's over 300, it's got to go to the board.
okay.
Yeah, you don't see that spring on your map,
Exactly.
you know, or that pothole.
Or the,
I mean,
the road and the turbine were supposed to be, well, this won't, if you get permission from the neighboring property line on this project. But it's supposed to be on the property line. Oh, now it's 60 to 90 feet in. And, yeah, it's fun.
much funner to farm around.
Yeah. Tell past experience.
What else?
That's about all I have.
Dana? David?
No, I had about 10 things I've read and reread and read and reread. Does it say what I've read or does it say what I think I've read?
No.
You know, how you just,
Yeah,
eventually you just kind of get that.
So-
No, it's kind of exactly where we,
okay. So I do, there is one thing, if you look at page 4 in the introduction, there's a highlighted statement there. And that statement originated as a result of copy paste from Cassuth.
yes.
And I highlighted that because throughout the ordinance, we follow a permitting process that the permit is submitted to the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator has to do a variety of things, reviewing their permit request and developing some recommendations and highlighting some things to then give to the Board of Adjustment for the Board of Adjustment to hear, and the Board of Adjustment would approve the permits. That's how it's written in the review and approval. So there's the discrepancy then in here right now between the Board of Supervisors retaining that authority and the Board of Adjustment actually doing the permit. We need to talk about that as a commission and decide, do we want the Board of Adjustment that is going to be the entity that gets the permit application from the zoning administrator, goes through everything and issues those permits along a similar line to what they would do for a conditional use permit today through zoning? Or do we want to follow the Cassuth pattern and say, we think the Board of Supervisors should be responsible for the permitting?
Well, the current zoning is the Board of Supervisors.
No, it's Board of Adjustment.
But then it has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors.
Not a conditional use permit. No, not the variance, I'm sorry. The variance is Board of Adjustment. Full stop. The Board of Supervisors can't overrule. The next in line, according to code from Board of Adjustment, is court.
Okay, well, I've misread something there, because
That's for variance. I need to look on the, I know that it's that way for a variance.
Because everything we've approved in the last 5 years since I've been on the Board of Adjustments has gone to the Board of Supervisors. Everything, from radio towers to whatever. I mean, it's always, okay, we need a public hearing. And then
It's
the
basically
next,
a recommendation.
yep, and then the next Monday, it goes to the Board of Supervisors on their agenda.
So, in the zoning ordinance, under administration enforcement, section D, Board of Adjustment, subparagraph 5, finality of decisions of the Board of Adjustment is the title of the subparagraph. It says, all decisions and findings of the Board of Adjustment on appeals applications for a variance or application for a special exception after hearing shall in all instances be final administrative decisions and shall be subject to judicial review as by law may be provided.
Yeah, that's.
It doesn't get subsequently for a variance or special exception. It doesn't go to the Board of Supervisors for approval. The Board of Adjustment is the final decision for variance or special exception.
I'm missing something there because on the appeal, that's on the appeal.
No, that's the finality of the decision of the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah. So why is
That may be
everything?
a separate conversation.
Yeah, it's just,
That needs to be followed, but again, back to this question, do we think the Board of Adjustment should be the one similar to a conditional use permit that is hearing and doing the work for permit, recognizing each turbine has to be permitted?
I think that, personally, I think that's a lot to put on a volunteer board. That's where,
Speaking with Kossuth zoning administrator, that was one of the things that, when I asked, why did they write it for the Board of Supervisors to do that as opposed to Board of Adjustment, was because the Board of Adjustment are appointees, whereas the Board of Supervisors are elected and therefore accountable to the public. And so their ordinance wrote it that the Board of Supervisors does the permit approval.
Yeah, personally, I'd rather see, I agree with Dana. And also, everybody knows that Monday mornings, if they want to go, discuss it with them, they know Monday mornings, but other than holidays, that's where they go, talk to and if they don't like it, they can get voted out. So
Right.
I agree with her.
The waivers would still follow the Board of Adjustment path,
sure.
yeah,
okay? Okay. So the next point on our agenda then would be to vote on, we want to publish this as our public comment document. Are you comfortable taking on faith that I will make the change so that the permitting authority is Board of Supervisors and add GPS into the signal interference and add a definition for non-participating landowners?
Kind of a
Are you
question
guys-
on that first is, we still need some pretty important feedback from Dr. Seaman.
Right, I was gonna get to that.
And that is gonna affect our setbacks. And as long as we're gonna review setbacks after the public meeting and after getting that information, as long as we're gonna review that as a group.
Yep,
Okay,
I'm
all right.
gonna get to that. So, to that, my first point, are you guys comfortable with me, for you guys taking on faith that I'm gonna make those changes if we vote to release this for public comment? Or do you want me to make the changes and you guys see it and then we have to meet at a different time to vote to get this out?
yeah, I'd like to have the changes made before I vote
Okay,
personally.
Probably the right way to do it,
Yeah,
okay?
even though it's gonna take longer.
You want to take 5-minute recess and I'll make the changes to the online version right now. I wouldn't be able to print it for you. You can look at it. Now, independent of those changes, so we did have the conversation with Dr. Seamuth about, she's going to get back with us on the thresholds that we have, whether they're sufficient or insufficient, what her recommendations would be, and how we would be able to measure low ambient noise. I would suggest that because our intent is to get this draft to a draft state where we're comfortable putting it out for public comment, there's enough in here, we're gonna get a whole bunch of comment back. We know we can anticipate there's gonna need to be changes to this once we get that comment back. In the interest of time, I'd like to address what we get from Dr. Seamuth during that round of commission review.
Moves us ahead on the horse race.
Yep. And so do you want me to make the changes for the GPS and non-participant and so on now, or do you want to?
Just to clarify, there's obviously going to be opportunity after the public meeting and after Dr. Seamuth's input, just to clarify that it's not just a couple of things we're going to go through. We basically.
We're going through all the
Then-
comments. Yep.
Then move forward.
Yep.
I don't
Because
think
this
we
is
can
just,
do it.
this is just a rough draft.
You're
until
okay
we
with
hear
it now without
I am.
without adding the GPS, without adding the non-participating landowner in this version that we would release, but pick that up on our next round
It's just another
after
email.
public comment?
Glad I'm not the chairperson.
You haven't seen anything yet.
Well, the Board of Supervisors one we have to address because that's major.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna change them, you might as well change the
Yep.
couple other little things.
Yep,
So,
I'd rather they get changed now
yep.
and we vote on that
Okay.
draft.
You can email it to us.
It's on
I
the
mean,
drive, that's
Yeah, I mean, you can look at
I
it
can watch
online
it, I
here
can change
in just a
well,
moment.
that's just it. I mean, I have
So
access. once
we'll
he
take
gets the
a
change.
5-minute recess and let me knock this out real quick.
Can we recess to the brewery?
No.
That'd be the end of the race.
Beginning of the new race. He wasn't in on our vote, was
I'm sorry.
he? He wasn't in on our vote, was he?
No.
No,
No, he was in here while we were out there.
we're just gonna move it up there anyway.
You know what? I'll just go along with the pleasure of the group.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get so much feedback that this is all gonna get ripped apart anyway, probably.
Well, here's one of the real problems. Okay, we put in 1.25 miles versus right now we got 1,600. You put it 1.25 miles, throw it out the window, the Board of Supervisors says, well, they can't do anything, so now we aren't gonna approve this at all, so now we end up with 0 ordinance in the county.
Yeah,
Which do we wanna do? Do we wanna put an ordinance out there that isn't exclusionary? Or
Right.
do you wanna put an ordinance out there that is reasonable?
That's a tough balance.
Where,
It's a tough
and
balance.
where is that distance? And that's the thing we've sat here and argued about.
But as a zoning, as a safety committee,
Yeah.
we're almost forced to go with the 1.25 if we can't regulate that third sound that, I have my notes right here. The infrasound and the third level of measure. Without getting feedback on that, I don't think we can finish.
Or is that just something you add on later? If it's,
Add on later, well, add on later what, so they can start construction, then,
no, I'm just saying that that's the thing about this, what we're gonna release
Right,
at
right.
this
yeah.
moment is the draft.
To keep this moving forward, yeah, go ahead, but
Yeah.
that's some pretty, that is, I have sleep apnea. People have no idea how important that is. Especially if it's stuff that you can't exactly diagnose easily. And that's a pretty powerful testimony. And that's something that, as a safety committee, we have to take very serious. I mean,
Whatever you put in place, you have to be able to measure.
Yeah, you have to.
or if you can't measure it to keep the distances down, then you have to keep it up to the recommended 1.25, because we can't measure it. If we can't measure it, it's 1.25 by a health recommendation. If we can measure it so that we can model it, then we can play with the numbers. We can try to get the distances down per se. I mean, it's like what you keep hearing in every safety meeting you ever go to in the world. Safety, safety, safety. Most important thing is safety. Your life is more important than somebody's wing tower, for example. It's safety. And that's what we heard tonight. At least, and I think those measurements personally, your percentages, I think they can't diagnose. I don't think a lot of people are coming forward who doesn't go to the doctor. So if you're saying there's 20% of the population that these affect right now, that's a lot of people. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's you. No, so what I'm saying is, that's a significant cut of the population.
5 to 20% towards that.
I wasn't counting all those. But that's a pretty big number. I mean, and that's, we gotta take pretty dang serious. And you guys know, I'm not against the windmills. I'm just saying, this is a safety commission. And that's a pretty big safety concern,
Well,
health and well-being.
it's a zoning commission for responsibility of recommendations to the board of supervisors regarding land use.
Based on safety, health, and well-being.
Yes. But I just wanted to correct
Yeah.
that we're not a safety commission, it's the zoning
Right.
commission about land use. Safety is a concern of the commission.
There you go, being like me.
And maybe when they come up with the number, that'll force them to redesign them and knock that wind noise down.
Absolutely.
You know?
This is what I've said all along. The people that's counting jumped on the first snake salesman that came through and we're getting inferior equipment. My opinion, based on Invenergy's reputation. And it's not about Invenergy, I don't care.
No, right.
There's just other companies, if you're gonna go buy a new car, you wanna know if it's got a good warranty or a shitty engine. You
What's
know,
that?
and different towers have different engines. And we're not getting a choice
See, this is
if somebody signed up without doing their homework. You know,
appeal applications. of
they didn't ask for a better company. Everybody just signs up.
But
And I thought hog confinements
you
were,
decide all applications
that
for
was,
the veterans.
Yeah, and most of us were farmers when it came to that.
Yeah.
So that's why, yeah, because after, I mean, everything we ever did all goes to the board of supervisors or had. So there's, but obviously. we're
Well,
not
take a look
following.
also while you've got the binder there.
Yeah.
Take a look at State Code 335, where it talks about the Board of Adjustment. In particular, Section 335.18 through 23 that talks about appeals. But you can start with the Board of Adjustment decisions.
We have time for a shower.
Okay, so, so I'm gonna jump up here. Do each of you want to look at this, or can I show Dana and you take her word for it?
Dana's in charge.
Okay, so there's the first one.
I got mine in there. Thank
It
you.
says non-participating landowner shall mean a landowner that is not the party of an agreement with the CWEX developer for hosting a wind turbine on their property. Next was GPS. My Computer's typing where it's not supposed to type. Um,
It's his bedtime.
On signal interference, I've added such as global positioning satellite, parentheses, GPS reception, comma, weather or navigation radar. And then next. Where's my finding?
You know, there have been several legal challenges and a lot of court stuff is going on with these things.
Across the country, you're
Yes.
finding out through the medical field that that's what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah, because so many people have felt left out of the whole equation and had it kind of stuck down their throats.
No, that's
And
correct.
that's why I think the way you're doing this is good, because it's allowing people to talk.
Okay, so we've left in the Board of Adjustment. This is Board of Supervisors. So the Board of Supervisors may increase the minimums during review and approval if circumstances warrant based on the factors taken into consideration. They may not reduce these design standards.
That needs an S. Supervisors.
See, I just thought you guys had talked to somebody about the health aspects of it. I didn't realize you hadn't, till I had a conversation with David.
Okay, waiver, we're leaving with the Board of Adjustment. Request for waivers adjudicated by the Board of Adjustment. Waiver approval by the Board of Adjustment. The application and the unredacted copies of the manuals and notices related to safety goes to the Board of Supervisors instead of Board of Adjustment. The zoning administrator providing a copy of the application and those documents to the Board of Supervisors. The recommendations on the final development plan that the zoning administrator puts together goes to the Board of Supervisors. The findings goes to the Board of Supervisors. The report on the application goes to the Board of Supervisors. The zoning administrator highlights any deviations where the application does not comply with something. He provides that to the Board of Supervisors. The decisions by the Board of Supervisors are final, and appeals to the Board of Supervisors will be addressed via petition to court per Iowa Code sections that I quoted earlier. And the financial security for repairs may be waived by the Board of Supervisors on recommendation from the county engineer. Waivers, Board of Adjustment. And that's all the Board of Adjustments that was in there. So Dana can vouch that we've got that changed. The Board of Supervisors changes it. What other things do we need to address before we vote on releasing this as a public comment draft?
I'm still not crazy about the whole GPS thing. You guys have suggested the 80,000 pounds, we gotta change to on-road and off-road.
Oh, yes, I did. I had that conversation with Rich. He was very adamant that it should not be on-road. It should be off-road for the 80,000 pounds.
That's a pretty crazy thing
His,
for our
well,
engineer to say.
his point was, there is no possible way to attribute any particular damage to, it was because of one of their vehicles as opposed to one of his vehicles.
That's what GPS is for.
His vehicle drives on that road too.
Oh, well, in the event that somebody says, I seen that, and you got no proof, you can back that up with the GPS. And
But it doesn't-
It's,
It doesn't.
I see what he's saying. It doesn't prove.
I get what you're
that I wasn't doing
saying,
it.
but, it's not just the on-road, off-road thing, but my deal is the 80,000 pounds. Like we discussed, an average front wheel assist tractor is 25,000 pounds, four-wheel drive tractor is 50,000 pounds. We got 80,000 pounds. Like I said, it doesn't take much of a skid loader to hit 12, 15,000 pounds, or a small payloader. I still think if it's off-road, I still think that number, needs to get down under
If it
15,000.
did, but if it, my concern is if we get it lower than what the normal farm vehicles are doing, and I recognize the point you made that, or I think you made, you know, those heavy farm vehicles aren't in the field when it's muddy, but the construction guys may be. I get that. But if to me, that argues for the GPS tracking for the heavy stuff. I don't think we want to get the weight limit below what can normally or reasonably be considered levels that farmers are using, because then it raises the specter of, well, why are you allowing these lighter vehicles on the fields anyway? And if we're going to require GPS tracking on these lighter vehicles on the part of the wind developers, now we're getting pretty arbitrary. And I want to steer away from anything that anybody can grab hold of and say, that's arbitrary and capricious, so throw the whole damn thing out.
And the landowner has the right to do whatever they want to in the contract.
On his individual land.
On my end, I mean,
And quite honestly, it's not worth, to me, it's not worth a lot of arguing over. I just think if you're gonna have it at 80,000 pounds, why are we even having it? You know where the crane's gonna go.
Well, but this, we know where they're supposed to go.
Supposed to go.
where they're
Right.
supposed to go.
But, okay, now you just made my point. I don't care if it's 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 150,000. The GPS was to track it, so people like Jerry Olson out here isn't still fighting, fixing tile.
Well, but that's the landowner's responsibility to fix the tile.
At the
Our
end of the
whole
day,
thing
it's, compared to some of these other issues, at the end of the day, I really don't care.
So you're willing to let it go? or-
Oh, I'm willing to let it go. I just wanted to bring it up because I think that 80,000 is a little, why are we even having it then?
Well, all of the loads coming in are all over 80,000,
Mhm.
and they would all have to be tracked. And those are what are gonna cause the majority of your problems with county
On-road.
tile and the off-road. And we're worried about, if the county engineer is saying he'll worry about the on-road with them and their a separate agreement.
Yeah,
Let's
they have
not
a
get
separate
into the
agreement,
weeds.
they have a plan of where they can and cannot drive.
I'm fine with it. It's just my whole initial idea of having the GPS was so that it's all tracked. There's no more discussion. Here it is. You either hear, you won't. That's, I was just trying to keep future lawyers and
Yeah.
questions out of it. Not a big deal.
No,
I don't care. Go fix your own tile.
Well, and that's,
I mean,
be the landowner, yeah.
you know,
that's, yeah.
just that
at what point do we
it
get-
would have tied into, it would have tied into, we've got a decommissioning fund or a maintenance fund. It would have tied right into that maintenance fund to make it less, I don't know, office work. Here's the fund, here's the GPS, the pharmacist has a broken tile there. Yeah, the GPS, somebody ran over it there, done, it's all just done. That was just where I was going with all that, just to prove it and make no fighting.
Yeah,
But I get it.
the only issue is it does levy a material requirement.
Sure, it puts the money on the company and not the taxpayer. That was
Yeah,
my point, but I don't care. Whatever.
Well, it's not gonna be the taxpayer anyway.
If you can't prove it, you gotta go out and fix county tile, this and that. Yeah, a lot of it does.
But if it's county tile,
That's what we're concerned about. At what point are you gonna crush it?
So it goes to that whole watershed district instead of who actually wrecked it. That was my point.
Again, it's
And then the
it's a
whole
muddy, how
paper
wet.
trail on it. I was just trying to
Yeah.
put all of those operational costs onto the project and not the general.
well, and the
population.
repair cost for that stuff would be theirs. The
But you
the part
gotta-
that, the part that
you gotta
would be
track
missing,
it.
right, the part that would be missing is the GPS track proof that they drove on
Mhm. Yeah,
with.
I was just trying to use that
vehicle.
as a tool to prove
Yeah,
it. So there's
I think it's a good idea. I just think that we have to have a minimum weight, and I
That's,
think,
and
all
that's fine. I mean, you're getting the heavy stuff,
Okay.
whatever.
right, what else?
I don't farm.
Most of those stay in the homes anyway.
Yeah, and
The
we may
trucks,
get a bunch of feedback
Yeah.
when the,
Yep.
you know, with the
Right,
review
yeah, I
too.
mean-
You know, Farm Bureau's gonna get a copy of this along with
Mhm.
all the farmers that wanna look at it. Anything else? Or is there a motion to release this draft as a public draft for comment?
That's your job.
I've already made one motion.
I move to accept the draft as now published online as a releasable draft in which for us to hold the public hearing on
Right, and provide a copy.
and provide the copy.
The copy, again, will provide the copy to,
Well, it's available online, so.
yeah, it's available online, but I'll specifically provide the copy to Dr. Seamuth, Invenergy, Farm Bureau, County Engineer, County Conservation, County Board of Health, the individual county supervisors, our zoning administrator, the North Iowa Area Council of Governments. Will provide copies to all of those folks because with exception of the NICOG, all of these folks spoke specifically with us
Right.
during a commission meeting. So we'll give them copies of this for them to comment on as well.
Because that's the other thing is, once we get it approved, but NICOG can also go through and say, look, this is,
Yeah, yeah.
because you got to get the draft.
So there's a motion on the table to release the draft as written for public comment. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And again, this is a draft of a standalone wind ordinance applicable countywide for the purpose of public comment. We'll get that comment with the expectation that there will be subsequent round of updates.
Yeah, real quick, was that Rotho? Second that?
That was Justin's favorite.
That was Justin. So David made the motion and Justin seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. All right, related to that, here is what I propose, and you don't have to give me feedback on this tonight, but if you can give it to me tomorrow. So look at it tonight. So this is what I would propose to put online that talks about this. I'll give you a few minutes to read that. So I would like to get comment because I do want to publish this online tomorrow. So I'll let you read that.
what are the public meetings? It's so many days before, so many.
At least 7, not more than 20. So I'll get it in the paper. I'll stop by the Anchor tomorrow with a copy of this. What they put in the paper, I don't know, but they'll have it in the paper next week. So our public meeting will be the following Wednesday, the 16th.
Yep, so that means our 7 days.
Yep.
So that means we get next week off?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll give you next week off.
Golly,
Yeah.
don't accustom it to it though.
Any questions on what I'm proposing to put on the website? Okay. The other thing that I will put on the website that this spoke to, and there should have been a question from you guys. It says, what the hell is this? What's this frequently asked questions document that you're supposed to link to?
I figured you had a couple. So.
These,
We're getting used to you.
if you,
It's already hit our links.
if you have, take a look at this over the next couple of days. This can be a live document. If you have, these are questions that I'm anticipating people may ask. If there are other questions that we should pre-answer, let me know and I can update this.
There's more. Okay.
And again, you don't have to read this tonight. So.
You don't work, you tell me only get 3 questions a day.
So,
You're over, Tom.
so again, we talked about the next steps. So I'll get this published online, I'll notify the anchors so they can put the public notice in the paper. I have reserved already the community center in Kensett. I verified that they've got Wi-Fi, plenty of chairs. And we should have a good forum for that. We'll have the owl with us, so we'll have a Zoom meeting, so it'll be recorded as well. And you may have noted in my announcement where I've made explicit that the Zoom meeting is not for participating, it's for listening. People can give us comments in writing ahead of time. They can give us comments in person during the
Jeff?
meeting. Yes.
This is Joel. Just an FYI, we've been using the Kensett Auditorium for our FEH meetings. Internet has not been stable there.
Oh, really?
We've had to use Wi-Fi hotspots.
Often,
The Wi-Fi hotspot's been working for you though?
They have been, yes.
Okay, so I'll just plan on doing that then with my phone. I'll have my phone on a charger and we'll just use a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Or I can provide you one as well.
Okay, perfect.
okay, so tell me again, Kensett
Yep,
Community
Kensett
Center.
Community Center, 7 p.m., June 16th.
Seriously, we probably should meet next Wednesday. To maybe just do a Zoom meeting and just see if there's just a quick, it's kind of my thoughts, see if something
Okay,
comes
just
up.
a quick, let's go through what we're gonna do at the meeting. Just-
Yeah, because once this document gets released, I'm sure some of us might have a phone call or two.
Mhm.
And then maybe by next week, we'd have something, hey, if something needs to come up.
So there may be need for, I had planned that at the beginning of the meeting, we would just introduce the commission and let everybody know why we were there. Maybe there's some additional things that we need to cover.
I don't know, I just,
Okay,
you know,
well, we can keep next week's meeting. I mean, we're used to it, it's a habit.
but
Jana's
I just-
children don't mind that she's not available Wednesday evenings now.
Just means Aaron has to put him to bed. And he loves that.
So this was.
Win-win for you.
Yeah.
So that brewery.
So we'll do that. We'll do next week's meeting just purely via Zoom. We don't need to do it in person. We'll do that
Yeah, and I don't
purely
think it
Zoom.
needs to be very long, it's just a quick,
Just an orientation, go through the,
yeah, I mean, to me, I don't really have anything on it other than if a topic comes up, I just think that gives us some preemptive.
okay? Any other discussion? Or motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Hey.
Opposed? Motion is passed, the meeting is adjourned. Again, thank you all very much for your time. Oh, before you leave, make certain that you write down on this piece of paper your name and round trip mileage so I can put in your mileage claim.
2,000 miles. I go to Florida and back before each meeting.
These miles were pretty damn high. The rest of it, I'm not even writing anything down.
No, I'm not either.
Okay, so Dana, what's your round trip mileage?
Looks to be about 14, so 28.
14 one way, 28 round. Yeah, mine's 10.
Round trip?
Yeah.
No, I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried.
What's that?
I'm not worried.
5 miles.
I'm up here anyway. I was up here for another reason tonight, so I'm good.
I have no
Thank you,
idea.
Round trip?
Depends upon how fast I'm
That's my
driving,
clip.
how I count it.
They're about the same distance as me.
Okay.
Grief.
I know what your addresses are.
There you go.
You can look it up.
Next week, we're carpooling.
Yeah.
Carpools of the
She coming to pick us up?
Bridge is
What is your
working.
address?
1090, 390th Street.
Doc, could I talk you into a ride home?
Of course.
A little worried there. I thought she was gonna tell me no.
I can make up 5 miles to walk now.
It's short across country. I've done that at night. I gotta leave my car at Kirby Knutson's and I was hoping that somebody here would be
Here's a-
nice enough to at least drop me off at the corner. I only got a
Interesting.
mile and a half.
Map. The Freeborn Wind Project, Freeborn County being above the line, Worth County being
Wow.
below the line. These are the dots of the wind turbines for the Freeborn County project.
You mean the Worth County, the Deer Creek project, as we call it?
Wow.
Thank you, Joel. Are you still there?
Wow.
I'll wrap it up, Jeff, if you're ready.
Thanks,
You
guys.
can wrap it up. We're
Looks like
killing it
an
now.
hour.
Thanks.
Looks like an hour.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.